Baruchot habaot, ladies, and welcome to our weekly shiur. I want to welcome you all, those who are logging onto Torah anytime, and those who take the time to log on to ohelsarah.com, the amazing site for Torah site for women and girls. This week's parasha is Parashat Naso, which is one of the largest parashiot in the Torah HaKadoshah. This parasha actually contains 176 psukim. So today we're only going to learn one idea, one primary idea from many. Now, our parasha mentions the episode of the Isha Sota. This is a very scandalous subject, but we have to talk about it because the Torah HaKadoshah considers it important to the degree that there's an entire Gemara called Masechet Sota that discusses this very case. What's the case? We're informed about a situation concerning a Jewish man who's married to a Jewish woman, Kedat Moshe ve'Yisrael. And for some reason, the husband suspects that his wife is being unfaithful. And there are reasons why he's suspecting. There are reasons why he thinks the way he thinks. Obviously, it's not coming out of nowhere. The Gemara tells us that the reason why the husband suspected his wife is, first of all, he sees his wife acting in a very talkative manner. Now, there's nothing wrong with talking and being socially polite, but imagine the following scenario. Imagine a couple is at a wedding, and the wife goes to the bar area to get herself a drink. At the bar, she bumps into a man who is or isn't married, who is or isn't a family member. The Torah says it doesn't really matter. He says, "Oh, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. How are the kids? How's work?" They have a short and innocent conversation in public, but it's innocent to a point. The husband is watching from the corner of his eye. He sees that words are being exchanged between his wife and this man, and he doesn't really give it much thought because these things do tend to happen. It's just social chatter. He doesn't think anything of it. Why should he think anything of it? But the next night, there's another wedding, and his wife is again wanting another drink from the bar because she hasn't had one since the night before. So she goes to the bar again, and suddenly that same guy from the night before, he's there. And he says, "Oh, hello, we meet again." This time, he doesn't ask her how her kids are or how's her work, because he did that already the night before. How much could change in a 24-hour period? So he starts talking to her about other things. And once again, the husband is looking from the corner of his eye. And this time he starts to wonder, what's going on over here? Again, those two are talking? His mind starts to wander to different places, and he begins to suspect that something here isn't right. By the way, this is the case in the Torah. I'm just dramatizing it for you for the effect, and for you to know that these things can and do happen. The Torah HaKadoshah is showing us there are no new sins in the world. Just because something happened 2,000 years ago doesn't mean that it can happen today, and it does happen today, probably more than it did 2,000 years ago. But anyway, this man comes home. He's concerned, so he asks his wife. He says, "Honey, what's going on over here? I see you were speaking to this guy already a second time." And she says, "What are you, nuts? You're paranoid." And he says, "Listen, I don't know if I'm paranoid or not, but I saw you talking to the guy last night, and tonight you were also schmoozing with him. It's not proper, it's not sanua, it's inappropriate." And she says, "Chas v'shalom, shame on you. You shouldn't even think this way." The poor husband asks for mechila, and they go to sleep. The third night, there's a bar mitzvah. And once again, the husband sees the wife schmoozing with this guy. This time he says, "Enough is enough. I have to give my wife an official warning that this has to stop." When they come home, the wife finds two people in the house. Two men. Who are these people? They're witnesses. The wife is all upset. What am I, on trial over here? And the husband says, no, you're not on trial yet. But if you don't stop with this immodest behavior, you'll soon be on trial. So consider this an official warning that I'm giving you in front of these two men. I am telling you that I don't want you to be secluded with this man, not in private, and I don't want you to be seen talking to him in public. You're not allowed to be with this man. Of course, the wife starts to complain. I can't believe what you're doing. It was just an innocent conversation. But the husband warns the wife in front of the witnesses, and they document the fact that she was warned. A few weeks later, those two witnesses approach her husband and they say, listen, we feel we have an obligation to tell you what we know. Now, we don't know the details, but we know that your wife was secluded with that man. We don't know what happened. We just know that we were standing by the door to a room that they were in, and when we tried to enter the room, the door was locked. Now, we didn't think anything of it, but you should know that those two walked out of that room together, and that's all we know. We don't know what they did behind those closed doors. Maybe they were playing checkers. We don't know. Maybe they decided to be each other's chevruta, and they learned the Blat Gemara. We don't know. Maybe he was in a bad mood, and your wife was giving him chizuk. We don't know. Or maybe she's part of Hatzalah, your wife, and she was saving him from a heart attack. We don't know. We have to give her the benefit of the doubt because we just don't know. We don't have X-ray vision to see what goes on through thick doors. All we know is that something isn't right in Denmark, and she was warned, and we see that there's an established pattern taking place here where it happened a few times already. When the husband hears this, he says, that's it. This is it. We cannot remain together until we get to the bottom of this. We have to investigate. And it's an unbelievable investigation, ladies. I'll give you the details of the investigation soon. But I want to tell you who leads the investigation. Usually, when someone's under suspicion, we go to a court of Chachamim where one person states his claims, the defendant states his claims, and so on and so forth. The rabbis hear the evidence and they make a decision based on that evidence that's presented to them. But in this case here, the Torah says that a human being cannot draw the final conclusion when it concerns the suspected woman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to be the one to make this decision. He has to be the one to provide a ruling. How do we get Hashem to give us a ruling? Well, there's an entire procedure that takes place. First of all, the woman is summoned to the Bet HaMikdash, and she's forced to drink special waters that contain the name of Hashem in there, a holy name. She drinks the special waters, and if she's innocent, nothing happens to her. The waters are simply absorbed into her body, and they actually create a healing within her, a beracha. If she's guilty, however, the water causes her belly to expand, and then she pretty much explodes as a result of her adulterous behavior, and she dies. But why does it have to go that far? Why can't she go to a regular court? Why does she have to drink these waters? The Rabbanim explain that once the husband suspects his wife, no one will ever be able to remove that suspicion or doubt from his mind until he hears it directly from the Ribono Shel Olam. If they go to a standard Bet Din and the Bet Din rules in his wife's favor, the husband can very easily say, she probably bribed the judges, or they were on her side. Doubt will never leave his mind. He'll never have closure. But if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one making a proclamation that she's innocent, that's a totally different story. The husband will feel reassured. He'll be happy. Anyway, let's get back to the case here. When the husband decides to investigate the wife, they can't live together as man and wife. Once he suspects her of adultery, the next step is a trip to Yerushalayim. The Torah says that any man whose wife is going astray, the word that's used is tisteh. She's veering in the wrong direction. Chachamim say that you could also read that word tisteh, which means to veer off, as tishteh, which means that she became a shotah. A shotah means she became crazy. The Gemara explains that a person doesn't engage in an avera unless a ruach shtut nichnas bo, unless he became temporarily insane, so to speak, especially a sin like adultery. Think about it. For a little bit of pleasure, you're willing to risk breaking up the whole family. You're going to ruin your entire reputation. You're going to risk your marriage for a little bit of physical pleasure. It must be that this woman experienced what we call temporary insanity. So the Torah says, tisteh, she veered off the path because of the tishteh, because of the insanity that took over her mind during those moments. Therefore, she has to be brought to the Bet HaMikdash. Now, we don't want the outcome to be an implosion. We don't want her to blow up and die, chas v'shalom. We want her to admit her sin, which means that the Cohen tells her, listen, you don't want this to happen to you. Just tell us the truth and we'll call it a day. If you really did sin, your husband's going to give you a divorce and everybody can go home. At least you'll still be alive. But if you don't admit your sin and you're guilty, you're going to drink these waters and it won't be good for you. You're only going to harm yourself. The waters are going to kill you. So wouldn't it be better if you just admit the truth and tell us what really happened? But this lady's stubborn and she says, no, I didn't do anything. I promise you, I didn't do anything with this guy. So they asked her, so what happened in that locked room? And she says, I don't know. I went to get my pocketbook from the room and that guy was davening mincha and the door closed behind us and it locked. That's it, that's what happened. And the Cohen says, okay, listen, if you're so confident, then go ahead and drink the waters. If there was really nothing that went on, then go ahead and drink. But if there really was an avon that took place, be careful, because the end is death. But she's obstinate, this woman, and she drinks the waters. Now, one thing you should know about the Isha Sota. The Torah Kedusha tells us that she has to bring up a korban, a meal offering in this case. It's called a kemach seorim. She brings a offering of barley flour. Now that's interesting. Why? Whenever we bring a flour offering, it's usually flour that's made from wheat. But this kemach seorim here is one of the only offerings that's brought from barley. Why? Says Rashi HaKadosh Alav Shalom, listen to his words, seorim velo chitim. She brings a barley offering and not a wheat offering. Why? Hi asta ma'aseh behema vekorbana ma'achal behema. Barley is a food that's fed to animals. Animals don't eat wheat, they eat barley. Rashi HaKadosh says that this woman behaved like an animal, therefore her korban has to be the food of an animal. And Chachamim ask, what does it mean that she acted like an animal? Maybe she didn't do anything. So why does she even have to bring a korban? She shouldn't have to bring at all. Why? Chachamim explain, because the sotah is guilty, she's considered guilty, even if she was playing checkers with this guy in the room. You hear this? Why? Because what does she think she was doing exactly? You're a married woman. What are you doing talking to another man other than your husband? Why are you secluding yourself with a man who isn't your husband? Why did you continue to engage in conversation with this man when your husband warned you against it? And how is it that you ended up in a locked room with this man alone? So you think, you did nothing, but Torah deems your actions as a ma'aseh behema. For that alone, you're guilty. When a person breaks the ethical code of modesty and goes beyond the borders of normal behavior, when he crosses the line of what's considered mutar and he enters the territory of what's asur, of what's inappropriate, the Torah HaKdosha calls it a ma'aseh behemah. An animal does such a thing. An animal doesn't have a problem crossing the line. So you're busy screaming, I didn't do anything, I'm innocent. You did do something. Which means that even if the sotah does not explode, you shouldn't think, what a tzadikah this woman is. You see, she was innocent. Nothing happened to her. The Torah doesn't call her a tzadikah because she's still carrying the burden of this crime on her shoulders. It's just that she didn't commit the averah of adultery to the final degree. But that woman has a lot of tshuva that she has to do just for the fact that she acted immodestly and that she got to the point where people suspected her, including her husband. Now, the Torah also tells us that on that flour offering that she brings up, oil cannot be placed on that meal offering. Usually, we put oil on the offerings because oil makes the korban shiny and nice. So why don't we put oil on the sotah's korban? Chachamim say, Shelo yihiyeh korbana mehudar, so that her offering shouldn't be elegant. She'ashemen karui or, because oil is called light. It provides light for us. Vehi asta b'choshech. And this woman committed her sins in the darkness. Therefore, there's no light for this woman. No oil is added to the korban that she brings. Also, in the olden days, when they used to bring a meal offering, they would bring a flour, oil, and then they would add a certain spice called frankincense. It's a very aromatic smell. But the sotah is asked not to add this special spice to her offering either. Why? Chachamim tell us she'ha'imaot nikraot levona. In Shir HaShirim, Shlomo HaMelech Alav HaShalom refers to the imahot, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, Alem HaShalom, as a levona. They were so righteous in their deeds that it was like this aromatic and good smelling fragrance that pleased the Ribono Shel Olam. But the Isha Sotah Pirsha Midarkehem, this woman over here separated herself from the modest ways of the imahot. She didn't behave modestly in the way our imahot did and were careful to do. So Rashi HaKadosh is telling us that this woman over here removed herself from the traditions of the imahot, who are referred to as levona, that special fragrant smell. Moving on, the Isha Sotah is taken to the Cohen, and the waters that she's given to drink are placed in a kli cheres, in an earthenware vessel. Now, have you ever seen an earthenware vessel? A rugged earthenware vessel is a very cheap vessel. It's not crystal. The waters were put in the earthenware vessel. Why would we use such a cheap vessel? Rashi HaKadosh says, Hi hishketa et hanoef yain meshubach bekosot meshubachim lefichach tishte mayim hamarim b'mekeda bezuya shel cheres. What does that mean? How did this woman commit this terrible avon? It was over a drink. When you drink, you lose your guard. Rashi HaKadosh tells us that she served the adulterer some fine wine in fancy goblets. So the Torah says, you served him wine in fancy goblets? You're now going to drink bitter waters in an ugly vessel. And where did this water come from? The Torah tells us that the water came from a special sink in the Bet HaMikdash called the Kior. The sink was made of copper. Where did they get that copper from? If you remember, we spoke about it quite a number of times. When the Jewish women were in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, they had copper vessels that they used as mirrors. HaKadosh Baruch Hu deemed those mirrors holy, and when it was time to build the Mishkan, the women donated these mirrors that were melted down and used to create this beautiful special sink. This sink was a holy vessel. The Kohanim washed their hands every day from this sink. This is one of the holy vessels of the Bet HaMikdash. But how could a holy vessel be made from mirrors? A mirror is something that personifies vanity. But the Torah tells us that these women use their mirrors for a holy purpose. They use those mirrors in order to beautify themselves for their husbands, because the husbands were depressed in Egypt. They didn't want to produce any more children. The husbands were saying, why should we bring children into such a world? We're slaves to Paro, and we're suffering the tortures of slavery. But the women said, you're right. Right now it seems hopeless, but in the future it will get better. If we don't produce children, no one's ever going to leave Egypt, because we need Jews to leave Egypt. If we stop producing children, we'll die out, and that will be the end of us. So we can't consider the way the world is today. We have to have faith in a future. We have to have faith in Hashem. So the women gazed into those mirrors in order to beautify themselves and make themselves attractive, so that they could persuade their husbands to want to bring more children into the world. And they succeeded. So Hashem said, these precious mirrors were used to create peace and harmony between a man and his wife. But the Isha Sota used the vanity of her mirror to beautify herself for another man. Therefore, she's going to drink the waters from the Ki'or, because that's going to be a form of rebuke for her. Now, ladies, I'm wondering what kind of woman the Torah could possibly be referring to over here when we're talking about the Isha Sota. It must be talking about a secular woman who engages in all kinds of averot of this nature. It must be talking about an irreligious woman, because could it be that a Torah observant woman would do such a thing? I mean, maybe the Isha Sota was a woman who had a public school education, and she wasn't really raised in a religious environment, nor did she have any connection to Yahadut, because who else would do this? Who else would engage in such an act of promiscuity? But the Torah tells us that when the Isha Sota appears before the Cohen, what does he do? Upara et rosh ha'isha. He uncovers her hair in order to shame her. Oh, he uncovers her hair. Well, who are we talking about over here? This woman walked into the Bet HaMikdash with a kisui rosh. Her hair was covered. So we're talking about a religious woman over here. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that it can only happen to a religious lady, this whole incident. But the Torah is telling us that when it comes to avonot, you shouldn't think that because you're religious, it doesn't apply to you. The Yetzer Hara and averot can affect anybody, especially a woman who covers her hair. The Yetzer Hara is non-discriminatory. He's not prejudiced. Averot, they run after you. So as religious people, we have to be extra careful, because we think that the averot, oh, they'll never find us because we're learning Torah and we're shomrei Torah or mitzvot. We think that stories like the Isha Sota will never happen to us. But no one's immune from this avon, ladies. As religious people, we have to be very careful, because the avon that we're talking about in this story of the Isha Sota, it starts very innocently. That's how all grave sins begin. The Yetzer Hara is a chacham. He's not going to clobber you over the head with the full-fledged avera. Instead, he breaks you down slowly. It's a short schmooze over here, a little drink there, an innocent walk around the block. All of a sudden, boom, there is kirva. There's a closeness that's created that shouldn't exist. So it all began because the woman allowed herself to engage in conversation with a man who was not her husband. Besides a hello and goodbye, meaning common words of courtesy. What purpose is there in a conversation with a man who isn't your husband? And that's where it all begins. That's how it started in Gan Eden, if you remember, with the Nachash HaKadmoni. But we're not going to get into that today. But the Torah is telling us the dangers of talking to a man who isn't your husband, even if he's a family member. Now, of course, you have to be careful. The Torah Kedosha tells us, the Gemara tells us, and apotropus la'arayot. Arayot can happen even between siblings. That's how dangerous it is. If it can happen between a brother and a sister, you don't think it can happen between a sister-in-law and a brother-in-law? It can happen between you and your husband's friend, God forbid. Of course, al achat kama v'kama. So, ladies, when we gather at smachot, we specifically put up mechitzot in order to create a separation between the men and the women. You think that it's only the smachot, by smachot, that mechitzot have to go up? You don't think that spiritual walls have to go up when you're hosting guests or family members in your home? It sounds extreme what I'm telling you, but our Torah is very realistic. Our Torah is so concerned about socializing with friends or family members of the opposite gender, and of course couples, whether it's traveling together, dining out together. This is not a Torah way, I'm sorry to tell you. Our Torah is a realistic Torah, and you know that it's true because look at the world around you. Whenever there's a break in a husband and wife relationship and there's a breach where people cross certain lines, there's trouble that's waiting those people that are engaged in these acts. Even if it never leads to some huge avera, but trouble already exists by virtue of that small breach. It may not be a scandalous situation, but it's not good and it doesn't bring bracha. Therefore the Gemara warns a man, Al tarbe sicha im ha'isha. A man shouldn't be talking too much to a lady. The Gemara says to his wife, he should try to speak as little as possible. Kal v'chomer be'eshet chavero. Even more so if the woman is his friend's wife. What's a man doing talking to another man's wife? This woman isn't his best friend. She's not the one who he stood with under a chuppah. She's not the one who he said the words, Hare'at mekudeshet li. He didn't say those words to her. Where's the sensitivity to tzniut? Living in America for so long has made many of us lose that sensitivity. Everything around here is very loose. Everyone thinks that modesty is about necklines and how long your skirt has to be. But it's much more than that. There's a modesty that has to be found in behavior. The Isha Sota began as a very modest woman. After all, she covered her hair with a kisui rosh. And somehow she found herself standing in front of the Cohen in the Bet HaMikdash under great suspicion. How does that happen? You should know that in our case, here in the Torah, she was actually guilty. She drank the special waters, boom, and she exploded. She didn't have a happy ending. She was guilty. She should have admitted her sin and she would have walked away alive. But because she was stubborn and she didn't admit it, she had to suffer a terrible, terrible fate. Now the Ramban Alav Shalom points out something very interesting. He says that most of the laws of the Torah aren't miraculous laws. What does that mean? It means that, for example, there's a mitzvah of shaking the lulav on Sukkot. But we don't see a miracle that happens as a result of shaking a lulav. We sit in a sukkah on Sukkot. We eat matzot on Pesach, but there are no miracles attached to those laws. But in this case here of the Isha Sota, if the woman is suspected of being unfaithful, the law is that we take it to the Bet Mikdash, and at the end of the entire process, we're going to see a miracle of nature transpiring before our very eyes. The woman drinks the special waters and look what happens. The Ramban asks, Why would Hashem go against the regular nature of the world where things happen within the natural order, and to go to such an extreme where this halacha of the Isha Sota ends with an open miracle? She implodes. That's a miracle. You know why? Because the sanctity of a Jewish family is everything. So a miracle was created in order to keep the integrity of a Jewish family, to make sure that the children are pure and tahor, and that there are no compromises concerning the lineage of the Jewish family. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to ensure that Am Yisrael has the proper genealogy. You know why that's so important? If the Torah wouldn't have been so strict in the case of the Isha Sota, there would be an adulterous situations everywhere. The outcome would be children that are born with the status of mamzerim because they were created from an adulterous relationship. Mamzerim are not allowed to enter the Kahal Hashem, and the Shekhinah departs from the world when mamzerim are brought to the world. Once you lose the purity of the lineage, the nation is eventually lost. When it comes to morality and immorality in relationships, these are the most serious subject matters in our religion, because adultery affects generations upon generations. The bracha of Am Yisrael is dafka due to our segregation, because we're so insulated. If we want to preserve the purity of the family, we have to continue to create mechitzot. You know, one of the tasks of Eliyahu HaNavi Zachor Latov, when he comes to announce the Geulah, is to locate the mamzerim in Am Yisrael. He's going to walk around pointing to people and classifying them as mamzerim. He's going to say, you're a mamzer, you're a mamzer, you're a mamzer. Many mamzerim won't even know that they were mamzerim. How sad is that? I'm not going to get into the topic of what's going to happen to those mamzerim. That's not the point, but the point is that the Torah is urging us to keep our families pure. Therefore, we go to such extremes that even miracles are created in the case of the Isha Sota. Why? Because when the people hear that a woman who was accused of adultery and was guilty drank the waters and she exploded, they'll be afraid to commit the same crime, the same avon. This miracle of the special waters that caused the Isha Sota to explode, it's a deterrent so that mamzerim shouldn't be born to Am Yisrael. But I want to make another point. Immediately following the story of the Isha Sota, the Torah HaKadosha addresses the subject of the Nazir. What's a Nazir? A Nazir is a fellow who vows not to drink wine for 30 days. He doesn't run after the materialistic pleasures of this world. He doesn't cut his hair. He doesn't visit cemeteries. In short, he accepts many forms of abstentions in order not to indulge. And the Chachamim ask, what's the connection between the episode of the Isha Sota and the Nazir? Why did the Torah put these two ideas next to one another? Chachamim explain that if a man sees the Isha Sota explode, he should become a Nazir. What does that mean? Well, there was a person who one day went to the Bet Mikdash for personal reasons. When he got there, they told him, oh, by the way, at 2 o'clock, there's going to be an Isha Sota ceremony. Oh, never went to a ceremony of Isha Sota. This man never saw anything like that. So he goes upstairs to the gallery in order to watch what takes place at this ceremony. What does he see? He sees the Cohen trying to convince the woman to admit that she sinned. He sees the Cohen warning her about the special waters and what happens if she's guilty and she drinks. He sees the woman protesting and insisting that she's innocent. He sees her drinking the waters, and all of a sudden, he sees a human bomb. The Torah tells us that after seeing something like that, he should abstain from drinking wine for 30 days and abstain from all these different materialistic items of the world. Be a Nazir. Why? Because he has to think to himself, wow, you know what happened here was a tragedy. How did this woman become a sotah? He's got to think that. And then he realizes that she drank wine. He realizes, oh, she spoke with a man. She adapted a promiscuous attitude and she indulged. This woman ran after the materialistic pleasures of this world. And that's why he should accept it upon himself to become a Nazir. Now, ladies, I ask you out there a simple question. Why does this man have to accept anything upon himself? I mean, think about it. This man saw the Isha Sotah explode and die, and he was scared out of his mind. Does he want to engage in any promiscuous act after that? He probably won't have the desire to do so after seeing something like that. So the man is protected just based on what he saw because he's scared out of his wits. So what I don't understand is why a man who saw something like this wouldn't feel protected already based on what he saw. Meaning, it's enough to see something like that in order to stay away from promiscuity. Why does he have to become a Nazir after seeing something like that? If anybody should become a Nazir, it's the person who didn't see the Isha Sotah explode. That person really needs protection. That person really needs to create mechitzot, fences. But this man over here, he's protected because he saw the outcome of an adulterer with his own eyes. So why does he have to become a Nazir? It's a good question. And the explanation is as follows. This man saw two things. He saw the Isha Sotah explode. That's true, he did see that. And then he also saw the Isha Sotah herself. What does that mean? It means that he saw this woman explode and he now knows the reality. He knows that these situations in life are indeed a possibility. He saw the suspected woman in front of his very eyes. He saw a perfectly religious woman who covers her hair being suspected of adultery. He saw her deny her sins and he saw the outcome. But anyone who wasn't present at that ceremony could doubt the possibility of such a sin or its outcome. Others who haven't seen the consequences with their own eyes might say, we never saw an Isha Sotah. We don't think that adultery could ever exist in our circles. That is outrageous. Such a thing would never happen by us. We're Torah-abiding Jews. We're yeshivish. We're a good family. Ladies, even though this man witnessed with his own eyes what the outcome of the Isha Sotah was, even though he saw a Sotah bekilkula, although he saw a Sotah and how she destroyed herself and her family, even though he now knows the outcome and the tragedy of it all, it's not enough for that man to walk away without putting up his own fences that will protect him and his wife from such an unfortunate and disastrous occurrence. You hear this? Ladies, the reason you need to know about these subject matters is because we're not living in the times of the Bet HaMikdash. If during the times of the Bet HaMikdash, where we had such spiritual elevation, where the house of Hashem, Kohanim, Levi'im, Korbanot, if during such a time a married woman and a man could engage in such acts, what should we say about our generation that isn't infused with the spiritual nuances and strengths of the Bet Mikdash and all its miracles? What should we say? A man once told his local rabbi the following. He said, "Rabbi, you don't know what's going on in the world these days. Nowadays on TV, The most popular shows are shows that glorify adultery. And that's the purpose of the show, Rabbi. That's what makes the show popular. And people watch these shows. So could you imagine what's going on in the world today? But what do we say? What do we say? We say, it doesn't affect me. It's just entertainment. I would never do what I watch on these shows. But you should know that when you see such perversion glorified, it weakens the entire fabric of society. It weakens the moral understanding and compass of the human being. Do you understand what's going on in the world today and how it's affecting your life and your core? What the Torah deems is a perversion, American society says is enjoyable, pure entertainment. Take the word pure out of there. This is what the Hollywood producers are able to do. They can take something so filthy, so repulsive, and they could dabble a little bit of sugar on top of it. They could put a little food coloring and turn it into cotton candy. They take one of the worst avonot in the Torah and they glorify it. If people are watching this, it can create in the person the beginnings of going down a very terrible slope to a world of avonot. We have to be very careful that our children should not be exposed to this garbage. And by the way, just so you know, not having a television at home or not watching shows that are lewd and offensive to Torah, it's not extremism. It's not Haredeism. But do you really think that someone who's against adulterous television, he's a fanatic? I mean, how far left could we go already? You do realize that you can't expose your children to the antithesis of what they're learning in the yeshivot, right? You do realize that we're living in a topsy-turvy world, right? Statistics show that 7 out of 10 marriages in America end up in a divorce because of infidelity. And why do you think that happens? When I was a little girl who just came from Eretz Yisrael to live in America, things were very different over here. There used to be a certain ethic and morality that you felt on the public streets and even in private. There were certain images and words that never appeared on a television screen. Fast forward to 2019, and what do you see? A country without a moral compass. A breach not only in morality, but spirituality. There are so many people who no longer believe in God. They don't believe in God anymore. So many people who have defiled the living Torah. So, which one of us out there can say that she's not affected by what she sees and what she hears? Ladies, I'll end with these words. What we learn from this episode of the Isha Sota is the lengths that Hashem goes to in order to preserve family purity in Am Yisrael. So should we expose ourselves to everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was trying to protect us from? I implore you, ladies, to become fortified in areas of tzniut and preserve your homes as much as you can. Don't forget that we women are descendants of the most righteous and modest women in Jewish history. Let's make the imahot proud and behave like true royal princesses. Hold your head high and stand tall and proud to be a bat melech. Our jobs as the daughter of the king, is to preserve and to protect his Torah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu went to extremes in order to protect us from behavior that isn't befitting a child of the king. I want you to remember something, ladies. You are not public property. Remember those words. You are not public property. You belong to your husband. When you preserve your tzniut, bracha follows you wherever you go. The tents of the Jewish people were beautiful because they were modest. That's something Bil'am HaRasha said about us. He couldn't bring himself to curse us because of the immense modesty and how careful we were not to intermingle. Yeh Ratzon that you should continue to receive blessings in the merit of your tzniut and be worthy of creating holy children that will lead us into the new era of Mashiach. Amen Ken. Yeh Ratzon.